Trustee De Vera.
Present.
Trustee Lagarta.
Present.
Trustee Louie.
Present.
Vice Chair Shubunka is not here. And President Lex.
Present. Okay, having a quorum, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved and second, or excuse me, it's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. And I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda, excuse me, the minutes of the February 20th meeting of the Library Board of Trustees. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So, Joseph, I see we have an expert
Yes, we do.
witness, so to speak.
Good evening, President Lex and members of the Board of Trustees. President Lex has been here long enough to remember that we discussed this item more than a year ago. And just to give you a little bit of background, the city undertook a major facilities assessment, all of the city-owned facilities throughout the city, find out what condition they were in, to quote Kenny Rogers. Obscure reference there. Anyway, and so that was completed, and the city council finally got the executive summary a week ago Monday at a study session before the city council. And that was a 60,000-foot overview of the entire city. We're talking thousands of pages of documents. This evening, rather than bore you with the state of every facility in the city, we're going to focus in on the 4 libraries. And with us tonight is Richard Chu, who'll be making the presentation.
Hello, Richard.
Richard is our city engineer and also the Assistant Director of Public Works, and he was a project manager, I believe, for the facilities assessment. And I will let him take it from here. Let's see if we can get a image. Uh-oh.
It's on the screen.
This does not seem to be communicating. Why don't you introduce yourself, Richard, while we
Okay.
stall and see if we can get the technology to catch up with us.
Well, good evening, members of the Board of Trustees. My name is Richard Chu. I'm the Assistant Public Works Director and City Engineer for Daly City. And I'm going to give you a presentation on the facilities condition assessments that we've performed. I'm going to start with an overview of all the facilities, just kind of giving you the big picture. And then I will go into the specific 4 libraries that we have. So hopefully we can get the projectors going. Oh, I'm starting to see that.
I'm
Okay,
hearing
great.
this for the first time along with
Oh,
the
super.
5 of you. So.
Oh, great.
Okay, so just to get started here, why do we need assessments? Basically, the city has over 30 plus facilities, and all the facilities are getting pretty old. And we're starting to encounter large repairs, very expensive repairs, and we need to kind of take a comprehensive look at all of our facilities. In addition to major repairs, just simple maintenance items are also getting very expensive. Parts are not available, and it just costs more to get maintenance parts. We also wanted to understand what the impacts are of all of our facilities and of the deferred maintenance. And one of the options in terms of looking at full replacement basically is not a very feasible option because we have so many facilities. And it's not practical to just replace all of them, build brand new ones. The key is to try to maintain them so that they last longer and we can get more years of use out of them as opposed to just letting it deteriorate and then build a new one. Now, what do the facility assessments do? They basically help us prioritize repairs. Because we don't have enough funding to do everything, we need to prioritize. And so we undertook the facility assessments to help us prioritize the repairs. Also, the facilities assessments helps us rate each facilities. They're called Facilities Condition Index. And basically, the smaller the number is, the better the facility is. A new building, brand new, is 0 facility condition index, and basically if it's more than 60, then don't bother fixing it. You should probably replace it. It also helps us estimate the immediate and long-term capital needs. The consultants that we use, they did a site visit at every single facility, and they looked at all the equipment, the HVAC system, the electrical system, and the roofs, all of the components of the facility. And based on age of the component and the manufacturer's recommended industry best practices, they should last a certain number of years. And if it's a couple of years away from that, then they'll indicate that that's an item that needs to be replaced in the next few years. They also looked at different funding scenarios, and they gave us an idea in terms of what the facilities condition index would be based on certain scenarios. So in terms of the facilities condition index, there's basically 4 categories. Green is good, fair is yellow, poor is red, and then very poor is this dark red. And when it's very poor, it's basically don't bother fixing it anymore. It's in such bad shape, you're probably looking at full replacement. And the idea is to try to not get into that category. So this next slide, if you just, it's not to check your eyesight, but if you look at the last 2 columns, the second column to the right is where we are today. And if you look at that column, more than half of the facilities are already in red. 10 years from now, without any funding being expended, would put you in the column on the right. Basically, almost every facility is in red, except for 2. And we have 4 facilities that will end up being in the dark red, which is basically full replacement. So hopefully we don't get to that position.
Are there any library facilities?
There are, and I'll get into specific libraries in a couple of slides here. So just real quickly, the current need right now, we're looking at $17.5 million for all the facilities. In 10 years, if nothing is spent, that's going to grow to $39.5 million. And they looked at 3 funding scenarios. I'm just going to show you one of them. Basically, this is the one that if we were able to afford this funding scenario, it'll head us in the right direction in terms of lowering our facilities condition index. And this funding scenario is basically looking at spending $3 million every single year with a boost of $5 million for the first year. So if we're able to spend $5 million for year 1 and then $3 million for the next 9 years, that'll get us headed in the right direction in terms of improving our facilities condition index average for all the buildings. Now, because we, right now, that funding scenario is not something that we have enough funds for. So we talked to council about looking at some possible solutions. And some of the ideas or possibilities is increased fees and costs to the residents, increased rental costs, or reducing our existing inventory of facilities. And if we were to do that, we would look at facilities that are being underutilized We would look at the possibility of consolidating facilities if they're nearby. Maybe instead of having two, we can have one, and potentially get rid of some buildings that we don't need. And if we make some money in terms of some of the sales, that could be put back into maintaining the facilities that we do decide to keep. No decision has been made. We're just looking at possibilities and discussing possible options, and ultimately it'll be council's decision to make. So now I'm going to get into the library inventory. Daly City has 4 libraries, as you all know. 2 of them are within existing community centers. That's something key to keep in mind in terms of, those community centers aren't going to go anywhere. The best we can do for those type of facilities is potentially repurpose existing uses. But we do have 2 libraries that are standalone buildings. So in terms of the assessment results for the 4 libraries, I looked at averaging those 4. And if you looked at the 4 libraries average, the current facilities condition index is fair, which is the yellow category. If we didn't spend any money in the next 10 years, those average facility condition index for the libraries would move to the red category, which is poor. The current need for the 4 libraries is $1.8 million. And the need in 10 years would grow to $7.8 million for those 4 libraries. Now, going into each specific library. One of them, as you all know, is Bayshore Community Center and Library. Bayshore was built in 2006, one of our newer facilities. The library is within this community center. The current facilities condition index is in the good category, which is the green, so that's good. However, if we didn't do anything in the next 10 years and we didn't spend any money, it would change to poor, which would be the red category. In terms of money needed for the next 10 years, Bayshore would need $1.47 million in terms of maintaining it and deferred maintenance. War Memorial is also one of our newer buildings. It's built in 2007, also library within the community center. The facilities condition index is good, which is the green. And in 10 years, if nothing was spent on it, it would move to the fair category, which is the yellow. War Memorial needs $900,000 in the next 10 years. And keep in mind, those are our newer facilities. Going to the other end, Serramonte Library. Serramonte Library is built in 1975. It is one of the oldest of the 4 libraries. It is a standalone facility. The existing current FCI, Facilities Condition Index, is in the poor category, which is the red. And in 10 years, if we don't spend any money, it would move to the very poor category, which is the dark red. And if it gets to that point, it's basically not worth investing any more money other than tearing it down and rebuilding it. $4.4 million is what's needed for Serramonte Library in the next 10 years. Now the last facility, the last library, is Westlake Library. Westlake Library is built in 1998. It is a standalone facility next to a commercial area. It's currently in the fair category, which is the yellow. And then in 10 years, if we don't spend any money on it, it'll move to the red category, which is the poor category. And in terms of funding needs, Westlake will need $1.07 million in the next 10 years. So keep in mind, the concept is to try to schedule these repairs so that we can do them on a planned schedule, planned timeline. If we just wait for equipments to fail, basically we're going to be trying to fix these under emergency situations, or we have to set up temporary air conditioners or HVAC systems, and you end up spending a lot more money that way than if it was planned. We have a lot of facilities where, and even some of these facilities where the roof is reaching the end of its useful life. It may not be leaking right now, but in the next 5 years, we may have 6 roofs that needs to be replaced. And you don't know exactly when they will leak, but one thing we know for sure is we're not going to be able to do 6 all at one time. So we need to spread it out and try to do them as we are able to, and better plan the funding scenario. So this is the results of the facilities assessment and the 4 libraries. We will be discussing the big picture with the council in regards to, what we can do to potentially better help fund maintenance of all of our facilities. So that concludes the presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do you have a breakdown for each of the libraries in terms of what the maintenance needs are or are anticipated to be?
Yeah, so we have a consultant that went to all the facilities. They did a executive summary report that we have here. And then for every single facility, they did a report, which also includes the libraries as well. So we do have a specific report for every single facility, and it outlines the needs and the repairs that are needed over the 10-year study period. So we do have those available.
Let's
So
open
how
it up
does
for
it-
board members.
How does our library buildings compare to other Daly City facilities?
With the exception of Ceremony Library, they probably are in a little bit better shape than overall the facilities that we have in all of City Hall and for all of the city.
Okay.
But Ceremony Library is one of the ones that is in not great shape. That's the one that would go to the very poor in the next 10 years.
Is it
if
primarily
nobody
a
sees.
factor of age, or is it something else?
Age definitely has a factor, and a lot of times use. When you get a lot of use, it takes a lot of wear and tear, and so those definitely have an impact on it.
So did we defer maintenance in the past years?
We have deferred maintenance,
Okay.
probably for the last 7 years, probably
Wow.
starting when the economy
Cuts.
wasn't doing
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
and so it's hard to do some of that catch up.
Yeah.
Did we ever have reserves for maintenance or future?
So, as I understand it, the repairs for these types of facilities, for the most part, comes out of the general fund. And so the general fund has been very tight for a number of years, and still is. So that's why, we were looking at, how much we have available and all the needs as the buildings are getting older and older. And we said we needed to take a comprehensive look at all of the facilities so we can see the big picture. And that's when we hired the consultants to go out and inspect every single facility.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
When was the last time an assessment like this has been done?
well, John Fuller's been here 8-9 years, and he doesn't remember ever doing one.
Never. Okay, so never maybe.
So I don't know exactly when, but it's probably been.
It's been-
more
I
than-
think never is an
Never.
outstanding.
Is accurate. Okay.
Yes, yes. I've been here 22 years. It's the first time.
Okay.
And I'm not aware of one having been done prior to my arrival.
It's very eye-opening, for sure. Yeah.
Tricia, do you have any
No,
questions?
no, I don't. I think everyone's asked the questions that I needed to ask at this point.
Mr. Chair, are these documents available for Board of Trustee members to look at and peruse and read through?
Yeah, I can check. We have, so the hard copies, we only ask for one, but we have electronic versions, and it's easier to read on the computer because you
Oh,
can
yeah.
blow up some of those charts and things and
Okay.
and really see it. So I can talk to John and Sabelli in regards to, potentially sending the electronic versions.
Or maybe we can put it on a thumb drive and get it to you. I mean, I don't know how big the file's going to be, but
I don't know, but I'm sure.
our
we
IT
can-
folks might not be too happy about emailing really big files, so it might be easier to actually give it to you on a thumb
Okay,
drive or.
Yeah, and then just download it.
Yeah, we can
onto
for
Well,
sure put it on a thumb drive.
We'll leave that in your hands, and
Okay.
then at the next meeting or before.
Or
you
before,
can
I
let
would,
us
I would like to
know
see it too.
What's going on.
Okay.
Yeah, we can get you the specific ones for the 4 libraries.
Would that be helpful to board members?
Yes, very much
Look
so,
at the
yeah.
details?
Please.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can see the specific improvements, recommendations in terms of roof or carpeting or painting. Those
Right,
types of
for each specific
recommendations.
library, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, would you mind, and I'm not sure who I'm really asking this of, sending a copy of that PowerPoint by email to the board members?
I don't know, I can send it to you and,
Yeah, I can do, is it on the P drive now?
yeah,
Don't take it down. Oh.
it's there. Yeah,
Okay.
no problem, that should be fine.
Okay. And do you need your hard copy? If you don't, I'd like you to leave it. If you do,
Sure.
then I'll just wait.
Here.
Okay, super. Thanks very much.
Sure.
And thank you very much for coming tonight.
Okay, you're
and
very
for the,
welcome.
very clear presentation and for the work you do for the city and, trying to keep everybody in the green or at least in the yellow.
Yeah, that's what we're trying. Thank,
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or discussion with Joseph or? Okay, well, I think that's very enlightening. It's a really good thing to have. It's about time. And I think we'll find it interesting once we look at, each of the sites and see what the specific needs are and the projections. Okay, moving to the budget update.
A good segue, actually, spent part of my day with Richard talking budget things. So first of all, just a review, and most of you I know went through Citizens Academy and had a pretty intensive review on how the city does its finances, but quick review. There's a general fund operating budget that takes care of all of our operating costs from, paying salaries and benefits and maintaining the day-to-day stuff. And then there's a capital budget for big capital improvements when we're building new things or replacing HVAC systems or roofs and those kinds of things. Anything over $60,000 ends up in the capital budget, not in the general fund budget. So on the operating budget side, there's no news to report since our last meeting. We submitted, we had a review with the finance director and the city manager, and that went well, and they pledged no cuts to the libraries then. We've done a little dance back and forth and refining some projections and numbers, but nothing significant. And I was really hoping today to share with you the schedule for the public review. An initial draft went out yesterday, and within minutes was recalled because there's already conflicts with getting the council scheduled. But I can tell you the target is to get these presentations out to the public sometime between the middle of April and towards the end of April, so in a kind of 2-week span. So it's around the corner, but probably after our next meeting in April. But as soon as those dates get set, I will share with you.
Okay.
Thanks.
So that's it on the operating budget. Now, on the capital budget, more long-range vision, Public Works is well aware, even without the facilities assessment, of some immediate needs at some of the buildings. One that's been on their radar for a long time is the HVAC and roof system at the Westlake Library. I didn't have the heart to tell them that library was not built in 1998. It was remodeled in 1998. I believe it was built in 1960.
I thought it was older than that. but
1960, about?
I didn't want to correct him
Thereabouts.
until I knew my numbers.
Wasn't it the first library built?
No, the original John Daly Library opened in 1920,
Oh.
for your library trivia question of the day.
Right, first library.
But the Westlake Library
promotion?
is on the same
Yeah.
footprint that it's been for
Yeah, yeah.
over 50
Yeah.
years, probably
Yeah.
closer to 60 years.
Yeah.
But it did have a
Definitely.
major renovation back in 1998. 1998, believe it or not, was 20 years ago.
Yep.
Wow.
And
Just
some
yesterday.
of the mechanical systems there are
Yeah.
in need of
Amazing.
replacing and upgrading, and we're aware of that. So it is at least included as a need in the document, along with quite a few items over at the Serramonte Library. Again, these are things that have been known. The electrical system at Serramonte is woefully out of date for the load that we put on that building with all
Yeah.
the
Most
computer terminals.
definitely.
The lighting, even though the lighting is not original, the lighting has been replaced within the last 10, 15 years, more. But lighting technology has come along so far with the energy efficiency of LED lights, for example. They're still running fluorescent tubes. I think essentially they upgraded from the old T12 tubes to T8. So they're more efficient than they used to be. But we did just a walkthrough with a team from PG&E a couple of years ago. And, you know, the first thought was for a building that's, there's just way too many light fixtures, but it's a complicated structure. It's built the way it was built. To retrofit it would mean putting in a drop ceiling, lowering all of the sprinklers, fire prevention sprinklers, and so the price is going up. Another item that is in their long range is my number one desire for Ceremony Library, and it would be an elevator to make the ground floor more accessible to the public, especially for the community meeting space. So they're aware of these things. Shaking money out of the money tree is a little bit more difficult, and having solid sources of revenue to pay for these things. And the one interesting thing is the one that might have a shot at getting funded in the long term is that elevator, because there's some money for improvements that improve accessibility to library structures. So that money can be set aside specifically for that. To get enough to pay for an elevator, it will our estimation is probably 3 years at a minimum. But there's a light at the end of the tunnel, so that's good. Some of the other improvements are going to be a lot more costly, and
Play the lotto.
you know, the number one on their priority for Public Works right now is the HVAC and roof at Westlake. So hopefully we will all celebrate the day that is completed in the not too distant future. But Ceremony is off in the wings, and probably a few years out before they really start digging into that facility. You know, where our administrative offices are, you know, that building is, I didn't see the report on it, it's probably one of the worst in terms of, you know, it's an old building.
Which building?
The Dolger Senior Center.
Oh, yes,
And
yes.
the
Oh,
offices
yeah.
there.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's an old decaying structure, and
It
you know,
is.
an untrained person can walk through there and point to some of the deficiencies in that building, and especially when you see the buckets come out to capture the rain indoors.
And when you're doing yoga, you got buckets all over.
So you know, that needs a roof along with the gymnasium across the street. So you know, just a slice of a lot of needs. Don't forget, we have 5 fire stations we have to maintain. Maintaining this facility that we're in right now is very expensive. We've got other community centers and clubhouses, the Talia Center, the Hillside Clubhouse, Lincoln Park Community Center, March Bank Park, and I'm sure there's others, well, Larkham. So there's a lot of buildings, 30-some that we're taking care of. Anyway, so back to the budget update. I don't have anything new, nothing changed since the last time we spoke. But the minute a hearing is scheduled, I'll make sure that the 5 of you know, and let staff know too.
Thank you.
Okay, that sounds great.
It's kind of a good news, bad news. Good news is we're not looking at further cuts. The bad news, it doesn't allow us to expand
To really
hours
do
or
anything more,
operations
yeah.
either. So
Still on a
we're
standstill.
just kind of holding status quo.
So are you relatively hopeful or confident that the capital budget will support the repairs needed at the Westlake Center for HVAC?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Okay.
So some of that is one of the short-term
And I know
things
you
that-
said it was a high priority, but I
Yeah.
know there are lots of high priorities, and you just identified a number.
And they're wrapping up some of those that were ahead of it. So it's place in the line, it's going up. So I am confident that's going to happen within the next year.
Now, when that happens, will the facility have to be closed, or the hours of operation modified, or will we just do business?
I
while the
think
work-
it would be fairly unobtrusive if they're working on the roof
Yeah,
and
it's
the
usually
mechanical
outside.
room and stuff. I don't think it will disrupt operations. It may be loud at times, but it's loud now with the existing HVAC system. But I don't anticipate it affecting the operations, but if it does, certainly we'll keep you guys in the loop.
It's one of the only buildings with operable windows, so they can actually circulate air without their systems in place.
And Joseph, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Is this something that was brought up because of the Public Works and in that presentation that we just saw with Richard, was that something that was prioritized because of the assessment?
No,
Or
this was
something down the
known
line?
prior to the assessment even, and we talked about this assessment at least a year ago.
Right.
Okay.
It took a very long time.
Okay.
And we
So that gives us an idea of the
we
timeline of when
we
things
were
get-
already aware of some of the things that cropped up in that report, yes.
Okay.
In a sense, we've been in the queue for certain maintenance
Right.
projects.
Right. And the problem is, since the recession, in the old days, part of the budgeting process is putting millions of dollars into the capital. And when the recession hit really hard and we were hanging on for dear life, all of the capital was put on hold. We weren't
Yeah,
spending
exactly.
hardly anything on capital. And when you look at the number of facilities we have, it's kind of a frightening thought. And if you've been around Daly City long enough, you know what happens when you do that. The poster child for what happens to a building when you don't maintain it is the Old War Memorial Building. We say old war, it wasn't that old, really. I mean, it opened in 1951.
But it was not cared
And-
for,
And by,
to say lightly.
40 years later, it was dilapidated and
Very much
stinky
so.
and,
Well-used and well-loved, but
Yeah.
not taken care of.
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and there's other, Lawson Hall is another one that's hanging by a thread out there, if you've ever been there, out in Bay Shore. And, another one that is no longer with us is the old Geneva Library, was not maintained real well either. But at least that one, they knew one day it would be replaced, so that would kind of explain how it was
Just let it
let go to seed there at the end, but. Well, and actually, I'm not even going to stop there because the old Lincoln Park Community Center was torn down and replaced.
Replaced, yeah.
And the same with Hillside and Marchbank. Marchbank had that little tiny clubhouse on Parkview, and it was replaced with a modular building, almost, I think, the identical footprint to the one that was put at Hillside Park.
Yeah.
But those both replaced existing facilities that had just gotten to the state of absolute deterioration.
Deep red.
Thi- This building, back in the 90s, on a rainy day like today, there would be multiple buckets out in the rotunda. The roof was replaced, going on 20 years now, and at the cost then of over $1 million to replace the roof on this building. And it was, a little bit of a complicated operation getting up
It's
there
not your
with the
typical.
dome roof and-
Yeah.
and trying to keep, an opaque surface so that, sunlight filters in, when we do have sunlight. We used to, sometimes.
Just not
Okay,
today.
any other comments or questions on the budget?
Out of Serramonte and Westlake, Serramonte, dire need for repairs, right? Which are the most utilized by patrons?
If you go by gate count, Ceremony is the number
By
one.
far,
And,
right? Yeah.
and a close second is Westlake.
Is Wesley.
A distant third is John Daly, and a
Yeah.
way distant fourth is
Way
Bay Shore.
distant.
And, he touched on it. Part of the condition is related to the use. And so those two libraries that are newer and aren't being used as extensively are holding up pretty well. The older ones, they get used a lot, are not holding up quite as well.
Thank you.
Was there something that was segueing to that? Were you segueing on something else?
Well, basically, I was just like, wow, there's a dire need for ceremony. I was under the impression that that was going to be the one with the heaviest traffic. I mean, every time I go there, there's a ton of kids, ton of patrons. So obviously, there's going to have to be like a total pull for repairs, right? What's going to be most important, but we can talk about that, yeah, once we review everything.
And I'll share this too. One of the things that didn't come out in his report, but in discussions with other staff in Public Works, they're taxed too because their staff, their worker bees have been reduced over the years. They're having a hard time maintaining what we have. They would like nothing more than to shed a couple of facilities so they can focus on,
Absolutely,
on so
Yeah.
Which makes
that
sense.
gets really complicated because, what would the community be willing to give up? Would you be willing to give up
Oh.
I know.
a fire station to better maintain 4 other fire stations? Probably not. Would you be willing to give up one library to better maintain and staff another one?
Yeah.
I don't know. We talked a little bit about that at
We
our
discussed
retreat.
that, yeah.
And it's a very difficult issue to get down and make some decisions, but it's looming out there.
Okay. So let's move on to the trustees' report. The first item is the meeting with Senator Scott Wiener. You missed a nice meeting.
I know,
I know, but I understand. We all knew that that was, the situation. Tricia, would you talk a little bit about your impressions of that meeting?
Sure. Well, first off, it was my first time, and I'm sure I can speak for a couple of other board members here. With the meeting, I wasn't sure what to expect based on when we were coming to meet with Senator Wiener. So he's was very open at the meeting to meet with all of us. He seemed very laid back and just willing to listen to kind of the things that we were talking about. Valerie from South San Francisco was also there from the libraries. And I actually spoke to her before we met and said, can you kind of spearhead this meeting? Because I don't know what the agenda is, if there needs to be an agenda. But she had some good topics to talk about as far as literacy. And South San Francisco has a library that they're also planning on building a new library at that location. So she talked about that a bit. And I think from what I took from the meeting, he just kind of wanted to hear, he's an advocate for Daly City, which is great. And I think he just wanted to hear our voices about concerns that we had with the libraries. Not like he can, stick a magic wand and do something about it, but at least we were able to let him know what the course that we would like to go. Not to say that we will definitely go that way, but it is good that he is able to hear us out and that he was open to having that discussion. So I appreciate that. Next time around, I would like to see more of an agenda set up so that we can really identify the meat or the root of things that we really need help on with the libraries. And, I'm just speaking for our own Daly City, but I'm sure if we sit in other meetings and hear other people talk from other districts or cities, it would be the same thing. But I think going there with an agenda would have been a lot better, structured a little bit so so that he can understand exactly what we are looking for, what we would like to see support on, whether it's through the community, through the senators, through the state, however we can get support, basically is what it is.
Thanks. Lily, you have any thoughts or
No, I mean,
remembrances?
I feel the same way Tricia feels, but he was very calm, cool, and collective, and he really didn't give you an impression of at least it's my personal opinion, right? He just kind of nodded his head, but you couldn't get a read on that. So, but I felt he was listening, and we made him aware of our library situation in Daly City. Mm-hmm. At least that felt, positive.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Angela?
Yeah, pretty much we'll piggyback off of what Trish and what Lily said. I think, the meeting was actually pretty general, right? He talked about topics that were important to the community, rent control, things like that. And then I do think we conveyed the message that, we really cared about our community. We want to make an impact, but I do agree we probably could have been, it could have been like a little bit more structured. And that way we could kind of reel him in, right? Get the buy. But he was very, straight-faced. But I think it was a good meeting. I like the direction Valerie, was going. So is this, so obviously, is this, we get a meeting with him like once a year or?
Mm-hmm,
okay.
once a year.
But yeah, it was a good meeting.
Yeah, well, I certainly concur with all of the observations. I thought Senator Wiener was just a very bright guy with tremendous command
Very much so.
of the facts, an understanding of the legislative process, insight into the history, as well as the current status of bills. pretty much across the board, that he's forward-looking, but that he has some limited ability to focus specific attention on libraries in terms of support from the state. And I think in that sense, while I agree that it would be good to go in with more structure, it might be difficult to craft a particular, agenda because of because basically we're an entity of a municipality, and there are limited ways for the state to support us. Now, Chayla and Joseph would have insight into that, and before we do this next year, we can do some brainstorming and come up with more of a focus before going into meet, and see
I
how
think
that works.
I think that would be helpful, and then it would, I think also, Bill, it would probably give us some insight, or he can provide some insight or guidance as to which way we could go. Not necessarily him giving us, the opportunity to support us, but he can give us some kind of direction as to which way to go.
Right.
So I think that would be helpful, yeah.
Okay, any other comments?
No.
Any questions, Lynn?
It sounded good.
He has a
Okay.
nice
Sorry I
office.
missed it, yeah.
Okay, moving on to advocacy. Angela and I volunteered, let's go back to funding measures. I was jumping ahead. Joseph, you were going to come back with some information about what kinds of impacts parcel taxes might have at certain levels in terms of providing.
Yep. I'll defer the specifics of that to Trustee DeVera, but one of the other questions that I know President Lex had noticed in the Muni Code, there is a section about the city council having the ability to levy taxes. That ability does not exist in 2018. It did once upon a time. Prop 218 pretty much wiped out their ability to do that. Everything is subject to voter approval, and specifically on a parcel tax, it has to go to the voters, and it has to pass with 66.67% in order to succeed.
Right.
So with that said, if that were an option, I'll let Trustee DeVera kind of share what that
Yeah,
might look
yeah.
like.
So, kind of a segue to what we were just talking about as far as, getting funding for structures and getting support with putting some kind of parcel tax in order to be able to support, like, the libraries, for example. I know it seems like the door keeps getting shut on us as far as identifying if that's possible to do. I know tax is an issue that people don't want to discuss, and having put on something more for them to be paying out, I totally understand. We're all taxpayers. I'm sure we're all in the same boat. But being able to put together some kind of a package to be able to sell this, I think would be ideal. But based on what Joseph provided me, we were trying to identify the numbers as far as parcels in Daly City. So he provided me about 23,800 taxable parcel in Daly City. So we had mentioned that we could start off with a $5 yearly parcel tax that we can put towards, to fund the library as a pot of money for the library. So Joseph was kind enough to put in some numbers for me. So if we were to do a $5 yearly parcel tax, we would generate about $119,000. Okay, that's a good pot of money on that end. Now, if we decide to do 10, I think Lynn was like, we could do $10. That would generate about $238,000. Again, a good pot of money. So you can kind of see the way the numbers are going. And so I was thinking like, $20, $25. So if we do $25, we could do about $595,000. But I can go on with the numbers, but the thing is how do we sell this to the community, to the council, to be able to do this? Joseph was just telling me, we were chatting before the meeting, and it was, people don't want to see that on their taxes. They don't want to see something going in there, especially if they feel like it's going towards somebody's salary versus, the running of the actual structure or the facility. So those are questions that are going to be brought to our attention if we decide to do a tax. But I'm still I still feel very strongly about it. I feel like this would be a way to generate funding for the library. And so I don't know what that would look like. It's still, a lot of research on my end to do, but I'm hoping that there was some way, somehow, I can figure it out. But I need all of your support too. But that's what I would, I think I like that route, but Joseph is like, I don't know if
But
that's
I
gonna
think
pass. I mean,
It's not impossible. Obviously, other
It's not
cities
impossible,
have done
but
it.
you-
And maybe our homework assignment between now and our next meeting is maybe find out over the last 10 years what cities were successful with library-related personal tax, if any. There's got to be some out there. And then
Yeah, of course.
how did they go
I
about it?
totally
And
agree.
how much did they ask? And
Yeah.
what type of community? That
Yeah.
certainly, all of those things
Good thought.
come into
yeah,
play.
no, that's a good homework assignment.
And
for
then,
me,
and
yeah.
then maybe, not just coming up with numbers, but maybe tie it to real-life expenditures. And I know we would all love to see the hours restored, and we get that question.
Totally.
Every day?
I know, Shayla's like.
Yeah, because
one
people
day.
think this is a temporary,
Yeah.
we're in a holding pattern, and one day things will get better. What would it take?
Right.
To get another full-time, or 2 or 3, you know? And that way, there's kind of a little bit more purpose to it, the exercise.
And,
So-
and that would totally eliminate the thought of us trying to figure out, when Richard spoke about, do we downsize? How do we go about, restructuring? We don't have to talk about that if we were having this type of money set aside for the libraries. Because I would hate to see, I talk about Bayshore and it's, 2 hours, 2 days a week it's open. But they represent another side of the Daly City community, and I would hate to see that shut down. Because those individuals that are in that side of the community
Yeah,
need that
such a
support over
cutoff.
there. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Me too.
I mean, it sounds easy to say, they're only open 2 days a week, just shut it down and let's just let them go somewhere else. But
The other
That's a
side of
whole
that
other side
argument
of
too
town,
is
yeah.
shutting it down doesn't really save the city all that much.
right, it doesn't. When
And
you
we're
do
st-
the
and,
math.
we still would have the building
Right.
to maintain.
Right, exactly.
And staffing for 2 days a week is not going to save a lot of money for the city
Right,
in the big
right,
picture.
Right, right. So,
Okay, other questions or comments?
Are we at capacity for full-time employees at for the libraries?
We have no vacancies
No
currently
vacancies
and
currently,
no
okay.
new authorized positions on the horizon. We lost several. I could, maybe revisit that chart I love to share so often, where we were in 2008 compared to 2018. We shrunk considerably, which is why we had to reduce the hours. We just literally don't have enough staff to spread out to keep the libraries open the way they used to be. I don't want to put you on the spot, because I can't think the number of full-time staff we have today versus, oh,
16, and we have 26.
yeah, okay.
oh.
So that's
there you go.
a significant percentage
That's huge.
that we were reduced, yes.
Yeah.
Maybe those facts are something that the public needs to know, because most of us have forgotten from the recession what we had versus what we
We add that
currently,
to the talking points.
and compared to what we currently have versus what we.
Well, and was it our last meeting or the meeting before, how we compare to every other city around here? Why is Daly City not like every other city? Our library spending
Right.
and our staffing levels are way low compared to every other library in the county. And don't even get me started with San Francisco, 27 libraries open 7 days a week.
Adopt us.
I know.
No, don't.
Well, Tricia, thank you for bringing this back.
Thank you to
and
Joseph
I
for helping me with that.
appreciate your willingness to take that homework assignment that
Yeah.
Joseph recommended.
Yeah.
And we'll put this on the agenda for the next meeting. and
Okay,
you
sounds
can,
good.
Continue to bring, your thoughts and information and any ideas back. And hopefully, at some point, we can fashion some sort of an action plan.
Yep.
Take advantage of it.
That'd be good.
I do think if we're asking people to dig into their pockets, even modestly, we have to tie it to something that they're going to get, like to increase the number of hours.
Exactly,
At this library
exactly.
is going to cost
That's
this
the-
much.
that's-
Would people, spend what costs a cup of coffee, a good cup of coffee maybe, but to do that? And so we'll look forward to your report next
Okay.
time.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, Now, moving on to talking points. What you have should say draft, because that's really what it is. It's just a rough draft of some suggestions. And it's not in a great format, because, but what we were trying to come up with were some things that could be said over and over and over again that would be memorable, would be tidbits of information reflecting the needs and the aspirations of the library, and where we stand. So this is largely drawn from a PowerPoint presentation that Joseph made in several meetings ago. You can see what it says. Generally, the statistics, we're the largest city in the county, highest in population served, but, you know, we're down near the bottom in some significant areas. Lowest in percent of overall local budget, about 2% versus 3% or greater than 4% in the case of one library. Lowest in per person spending, we're about $25 per person. The next lowest is $42, the highest is $135. Third lowest in staffing. The hours issue, the library services, we do a really good job in serving our population despite the handicaps, the financial limitations. You can see the number of card holders. You know, people are probably not aware that we're doing this much work with the little we have. The number of visitors by gate count and transactions during the past fiscal year. These numbers were provided by Chayla, thank you. And some of the outstanding programs that we offer. And then just a comparison with San Mateo County Municipal Libraries, the other 7 cities that have libraries, not a comparison, but, you know, a list. And then this isn't filled in, but the thought was other talking points could include things like, what are the needs? What are specific funding needs or priorities? What would it buy? You know, how many hours would it restore? What facility is possibly going to really deteriorate unless it receives attention? Action items, you know, what can the public do? Visit the city council, talk to your council members. Fundraising ideas, staffing efficiency. This was Angela's suggestion. As a matter of fact, several of these on the back are thanks to Angela. Looking at volunteer activities to help slim staffing and increase the literacy rate in the public school system. Those are a little broader, but
For volunteer, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I recall that because of union contracts, we could not have any volunteers staffing the library.
No, we do have volunteers. The union issue complicates it a little bit. Volunteers can't supplant the work of a union worker, but they can certainly assist in a number of ways, and we've had volunteers for years and years. And, you know,
But it's not going to reduce the number of staff required to keep a library open.
It's not going to keep hours longer.
Angela, do you want to elaborate on any of these points?
Maybe, you know, lighten the load, right? Maybe if a librarian is held up putting away books or checking in books, that they, you know, don't use their full skill to engage with the community. So if we do have volunteers that can do like the kind of menial things for us, and I'm pretty sure if we can get, you know, some statistics out to the public, that, you know, we might get some volunteers and then kind of organize it that way. In the past, have we done anything like interns or something where they could get like school credit for helping out? People that, I don't know, Carrie, does Skyline College can we do any partnerships with like Skyline College? Things to that effect?
There's a lot of questions you just asked. Most of the high schools around here do have a community service requirement for graduation. A lot of those kids have ended up on our doorstep, usually at the 11th hour. They need to
Yeah.
jam a whole bunch of hours in a short amount of time. Some of them have indeed ended up at libraries, recreation here at City Hall. Skyline, we've certainly had discussions with Skyline over the years. I wouldn't say we have a partnership with them.
Yeah, no, we have a great teen volunteer program. The teens come to our programs like Zone or the Homework Help at John Daly Idea Labs, and they, help with the kids doing whatever activity that they're doing. If they need assistance, they help with setting up and cleaning up, things like that. They're great. They're absolutely wonderful. We also have a partnership with the school district. We have some workability students that are at the Westlake Library, and they do things like cleaning the books or cutting out shapes for, story time activities, things like that. We don't generally have people doing the shelving. The shelving is done by hourly staff at the page level. I would say the volunteers. We also have some adult volunteers that do assist with the story times, welcoming the families, getting the germs off of the little shaker eggs and things like that. So we appreciate everything that our volunteers do. We have a volunteer who brings her dog, her certified service dog, for the Pause to Read program, but it's nothing that would free up a staff person at this time.
Okay, so what are your thoughts in terms of talking points? Is this something that would be useful, that if we could put it into a format, let's say on a index card, maybe have the statistics on one side, the services on the other, something we could carry around, look at, refer to, or even consider printing something, like a little credit card sized card with these statistics on it that we would pass out, at Saramati events. Well, of course, we get so many different people at Saramati events. I'm not sure how productive that is, but, at community meetings, arts and culture activities, we can kind of spread the word. If you think this would be a worthwhile direction to head, and if so, I'd be happy to continue to refine this, or take any suggestions you've got, incorporate them. So it's open for feedback. And
I can format and print them.
We can do it that way, or we can put it on the library website. I think it's something that could be on the website, and then maybe for each of the branches of the library, because I don't know how often you'd be handing out flyers to people. I mean, how often do we have events that we could hand them out to? So I'm thinking maybe more like doing some kind of a poster type of flyer thing to be put at the library. You know how they put up different types of posters, but that's something that can be more stationary at the library, showing the information based on what we have here on the points. We can narrow down the specifics, be more detailed, and then just post them at each of the libraries. So that the patrons can actually see them and identify, oh, here's the library that I use, so what's going on with this library, the support that they need based on, just the planning. How much we need here at the Westlake Library is $1.7 million after 10 years to really spruce up this library.
that's a good idea.
That's just my thoughts. So.
I like the Facebook page
Other thoughts?
Facebook page. Yeah.
because,
All of it, right? So we
Social media,
we have a
yeah.
card, we keep it on our person. If we need to refer to it, we'll have that. I like that. Definitely utilize social media and then have like a marketing tool within each of the libraries, I think will definitely create like a sense of urgency.
How would you feel if we had credit card size cards with some of these points on them that we would carry with us to meetings and when we're interacting with friends and say, hey, I'm on the Board of Trustees. I'd like you to read this because there's some facts on here that about our libraries that you may not be aware of. Take a more personal engagement approach. I don't know if you're like me. When I walk into a library, I'm on a mission usually. I have a grandchild in tow.
That's
I'm
fun.
going to pick up a hold. I have something, that I'm doing, and I don't really notice some of the things that are posted. they don't stop. Some of the electronic bulletin boards, I would say, the flat screens, might be another way to present this.
Scrolling fast.
But even those, I noticed, I looked at first when they were kind of new, and I kind of forget to look at them now.
I'm always nosy around the checkout stand.
Oh, the
Yeah.
flyers.
The checkout.
Yeah.
That's
Lots
right.
of,
Yeah.
And that credit card idea, a little credit card, maybe I can't see it all fitting, but
Oh, there's
the
accordion
ones,
style.
the accordion things, yeah.
Yeah,
That would be-
that's a good idea.
But where's that cost coming from?
Well, we have to see, I think,
Yeah,
decide
like
whether
that.
it's a worthwhile idea. I mean, for example, DCPLA might fund it. If they thought that this was really a good idea and would support libraries, we could possibly go to them. There might be other sources.
Like something like that, yeah.
Yeah. That's a good one.
I like that.
San Jose Public Library.
Oh, see,
Credit
there
where
you
credit
go.
is due.
Which public?
San Jose.
Oh, okay.
Oh, they do, huh? So, something like that,
You know,
people would
maybe
pick
we
it up.
could list like on that card, each flap of that card has a different library and what their
Exactly,
hours
yeah.
are and what their needs are could be listed, like our wish list or immediate need or
Fund a
something.
library. Adopt a library.
Yeah.
Have a
And
spare million.
those would get picked up and maybe left on the bus, but somebody else would pick it up. So, it's,
Social media is free, right?
yeah, I know.
We could,
That's why I was thinking that
so
Facebook
just
was a good idea.
maybe like refine our ideas, put it out on social media immediately, and then we work on, getting the cards and what have you funded. But, if they're already top of mind for all of us, as long as we kind of have that in mind, we can just like freely talk about it too, right?
Well, this really is designed to be a tool for us, first and foremost, for us to use, for us to know, for us to talk about at every opportunity that we have. And, again, I think that if we develop these, we can also request appearances at certain civic organizations or clubs, Kiwanis, Rotary, Lions. They may be aware, but, it doesn't hurt to remind them where we are, what we need. So I'll work with Shayla to continue to develop this, reformat it, and maybe we can get
They have late fees in there.
we can talk about different options on how to present this and what the cost might be.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Any other comments or questions on these?
Thank you for your work on that.
Okay, thank you, Angela.
Thank you.
And before, let's see, moving to DCPLA, let me just go back for a second to the Scott Wiener meeting. I want to thank Jayla for organizing that and staying in touch with us and letting us know about the opportunity and the when and the where and being there. And also Valerie Summer, the library director from South San Francisco, who was so helpful. Okay, let's move on to the DCPLA report. First of all, there was no regular board meeting this month due to a lack of a quorum. However, there are some things to report, such as the St. Patrick's Day luncheon results. And I would like to just start off by reporting, as we all know, that one of our trustees spoke for one of the Fund the Needs. And I want to thank Angela for doing that. I thought she did a great job. What was your need?
The
Chromebooks.
Chromebooks.
Ooh, on the iPad.
Okay. Well, that was,
The Republic Services outdid us, huh?
Susan Brissenden Smith asked me to thank everyone on the Board of Trustees for their work and their participation, and said that it seemed everyone enjoyed that day in celebrating libraries. The results, specifically of the raffle, was that then $10,080 was collected, including a $10 tip that Janine got at the bar.
Nice.
Sponsors provided $11,250 in cash and pledges. And Fund the Need, the individual needs drew in excess of $2,000 each. The furniture donation for Westlake had 41 individual donations for $2,410. The early literacy computer stations had 22 donations for $2,755. And the Chromebooks to check out had 26 donations at $2,280. Susan said we may still receive donations for Fund the Need, as some people who canceled and were not able to attend the luncheon said that they would forward donations. Susan also asked me to remind everyone that even though it's kind of far off, September 29th, DCPLA is planning Crazy About Cars in Colma, and more specific information will be available as the planning develops. But she said, hold the date, September 29th, Saturday.
I can't believe it. It's just my 50th grammar school reunion.
Oh my goodness.
Figures.
Are you guys reunioning during the day?
We're on the committee to help set up during the day.
Okay, I understand that. Okay, any questions on the report from DCPLA?
Nope.
Tricia, do you have anything to add? I know you've often got.
No, I'm done for the evening.
Okay. Are there any announcements and communications? Joseph?
One very quick one. This coming Monday at the City Council meeting, the City Council will be proclaiming National Library Week for April 8th to the 14th.
Okay.
I'm hoping the president of the board will be there to accept the proclamation if he is available, and if not, perhaps one of his colleagues on the board.
Sure.
Sounds
So
like an
Monday, I'm
important
sorry,
thing
the
to
date again,
attend.
Monday,
It'll be the first item of business, and hopefully,
The 26th?
this Monday, the 26th.
oh, this Monday,
Yeah.
sorry.
This Monday is the meeting.
Oh,
Yes, I'll be there.
Okay.
And
Y'all gonna be here?
I would welcome all the support I can get.
Not good. I'll be traveling, I'm sorry.
Okay.
What time is that meeting?
6?
7 o'clock.
Oh, 7 o'clock. I always,
It's the
Put
very
it on
first
there.
item. It's the first item of business, so.
Shoot. Sorry.
okay.
At 7.
It'd be a great photo op, I'm sure. You know. Okay, thank you for that. Agenda building for next meeting. We'll continue some of the items. Hopefully we'll know how to access the individual reports for the facility assessment before the meeting. Budget update should be on the agenda. We'll put advocacy back on with funding measures for Tricia, talking points for me. Other items?
Did we didn't announce that Susan got that grant approved for the books?
$3,000?
Yeah, I think so. So that's a
Was that for
success.
children's books?
Children's books, yeah.
Okay, that was a very generous donation or grant from Wells Fargo Foundation to DCPLA.
Thank you,
Pending
DCPLA.
last meeting, and it got approved, so.
Again, thank you very much, Angela, for being a good connection between us and the bank.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other agenda items for the next meeting? Jayla, Joseph, trustees?
Nope, good.
Okay, seeing only one person in the public seats who doesn't look like he wants to make a comment.
There's actually two over there.
There's two.
Oh, is it you?
There's two.
One just didn't make it. Slouched
Okay.
over. Calling it a day.
Okay, any other business for the good of the order before we adjourn?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.